Welcome back to Burnout Banter. Today we're diving into the State of Workplace Burnout 2024 report, which was produced by the team at Infinite Potential. The report gives us a snapshot of burnout in the last year. Most notably, burnout rates have actually stopped rising, but they're not exactly dropping either. So the big question becomes, what's working, what's not, and where do we go from here? Whether you're leading a team, navigating a demanding project, or just trying to make it through the week without losing your mind, this episode is for you. And of course, we'll be looking at all of this through the lens of the AEC industry because, as you know, our challenges can look a little bit different. Hey, everybody, my name is Rachelle.
And I'm Jeff.
And this is Burnout Banter. Before we jump into today's episode, remember to subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Amazon, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen so that you can stay up to date with the latest banter.
Did we make
So
it through the week without losing our minds? I was laughing a little bit.
I did not. My brain is absolute mush right now. I've been multitasking so much and task switching that I don't even know what time it is. We never record this late in the afternoon, and everybody knows I'm useless after 2 o'clock. So, this is gonna be a fun one.
I'm excited.
Excellent. Well, we're going to do our best to get through it since both Jeff and I have lost our minds this week. But I figured we'd start with kind of an overview of this report. So it's really interesting. It's free. We will link it in the show notes. It's just, I mean, we're burnout nerds, so we like to read all of the things on burnout. But I thought it was really interesting that they were reporting burnout is holding steady at 38%. I want to point out that this is a global report. Typically, when we talk about burnout, we're focused in like the States, North America, and our burnout rate is very, very high. So interesting to see that globally, it's actually under 50%.
I would be curious what's like chronic stress is too, though. Like I get the
True.
burnout maybe holding steady, but I bet stress is much higher than that 38% number, or at least chronic
Yeah.
stress.
Yeah, I would like to see the methodology on this report. I also thought it was very, very interesting that there was a little bit of a gender disparity. Women's burnout is up 42%, but men's is down to 30%. Ladies, we're stressed. I don't have to ask you why. I can guess. But men, what are you doing? Teach us your ways. Why are you not as stressed out as we are?
Better compartmentalization, I guess. I don't know.
There are no attacks on your bodily autonomy and your rights, maybe. I don't know.
Maybe, maybe
Gonna
not.
drop that there.
Yeah, that could be.
Yeah, there's a lot in the report.
Why
But
do
I
you,
think,
why do you think that is? Did you give it any thought? Why women? I think women are probably asked to do more than men are.
so
Would
this
you
could be a
agree?
whole episode. Yeah, because there's like the silent load that women take on. There's a really great comic by a French artist, and I can't remember her name at the moment, but it's like the emotional load. And it's just all the things that women keep in their mind that they know they have to do throughout the day and just like magically get done. It's very much like proposals. This magic just happens. And men appreciate it, but they don't recognize it. Like your house magically getting cleaned or the like dinner being made or like reservations happening, things being scheduled, tasks being handled, like administrative stuff that needs to happen just to get things done and moved forward. A lot of time women take on that role because we just task manage so quickly, whereas men compartmentalize and they get to it when they get to it, but we can't wait for that. So we're just doing it.
I also notice like my wife will take on the emotions of the rest of us. So if I'm burned out or feeling stressed, then she takes that on and it adds to her load, even though she may not be even dealing with whatever it is that I'm dealing with. Like it could be work related. It has nothing to do with her, but she still takes on the load, or she'll do that with the kids too. So I think that could be a part of it also.
I've always wondered if that is a universal thing because I do that as well. I'm very sensitive, and I know some of my female friends are also very sensitive to the emotions of people around us.
I
Uh,
don't think I mean, we're stereotyping, but I don't think it's a stretch to say that women are more in tune with their emotions than men are. I also think like my wife's pretty empathic, so it could have to do with that a little bit more. Like empathic people probably do that more than non-empathic people, but I don't I don't know. I've never considered whether you're an empath or not. So
uh, maybe. Yeah, I mean, we are stereotyping a little bit, but I think there are plenty of studies that can back up emotional intelligence in women scores a little bit higher. And that's probably what that is. So that emotional load is very heavy on us, which is probably why burnout is creeping out. I'm sure there are a number of factors that are contributing to that.
we just caveman grunt. Tim the Toolman Taylor or whatever.
I'm
You know,
gonna try it next time. Eh, I don't have the answer to that.
do you know who Tim the Toolman Taylor is?
Sure do.
Okay, good.
This is not going to be one of those moments, Jeff, where I'm too young to know that reference. I used to watch Home Improvement all the time when I was a kid.
So what we're saying is Al is probably more burned out because he takes on all Tim's burdens.
Yes. High emotional intelligence, high stress is what we're saying.
Shout out to Home Improvement. When was the last time that was mentioned in a podcast?
Ooh,
Before when
10,
podcasts
8
didn't exist.
years, probably. And it's building, it's construction, so it's, tangentially tied in. Something also that stuck out to me was my reaction as I was reading through the report and looking at these numbers and like how low they seemed to me. And I'm wondering if like burnout has just been so normalized, particularly in AEC, but just in our culture in general. Like, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe, but then I would also wonder if, like, if there's still a lack of awareness around it. Like, we talk about it all the time, but I know it's talked about in the firm I work for on a somewhat regular basis, but I wonder how much it is talked about. Like, is that a thing in construction to be talking about burnout? I think architects tend to be pretty driven, and so are they talking about it? I don't know as much.
I mean, there's been an uptick in like mental health awareness in construction. I attended a session actually at a construction conference last year where they brought in a woman specifically to talk about the she works for a company that literally only does outreach for construction like mental health crises. And so she was talking about like what they offer and why it's important and the impact that they've had on the customers that work with them and how much they've been able to drop like suicide rates, unfortunately. I mean, fortunately, been able to drop them, but that's a big issue in construction. And this has been a thing for a lot of her customers. So seeing that adopted, I think it's upticking, but I agree that we need to keep talking about it. We need to keep normalized talking about it.
Yeah, I also think people throw it around as a thing without really understanding what it means too. Because I think people conflate stress and burnout also.
Yes. Yes, we definitely do. Sorry, I was trying to
I
scroll
think
through the
I think it was normalized for a long time, Rochelle, in order to answer your question. Burnout was just a state of being, and I think hopefully we're trending away from that.
I
Even
hope
though
so.
nobody would have.
I'm thinking about all the architects I knew in like school, like the architecture students who literally set up cots in the architecture studio because they needed to be able to work all night and just like take a nap.
Yep.
Like it starts there. Can we
Yep.
not? Can we unnormalize that? And I'm hopeful for the next generation to be a little more vocal on like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody yesterday and he was talking about walking across the campus at the University of Nebraska as an architect. Most of the schools, right, were shut down, but architecture was still going strong late into the hours of the night. And
Of course.
along with theater kids and artists, like those were the two or the three schools that always seemed to be burning the midnight oil.
I kind of expect that from artsy people. And I guess architects fall under that like artsy creative type. So many of them are just like evening night owl people, but
They don't
yeah.
eat, and they also get to work really late.
Yeah. Anyway.
That's just a personal issue I always have when we're on site visits or whatever. Never want to eat. I don't know
Yeah,
what that stems from.
I don't know. I don't know. I forget to do that, which is why I'm really glad when we travel, it's the first thing you say is we need to go get food. We have to sustain ourselves as humans. Thank you for reminding me to take care of myself. So there are a bunch of other things in the report that probably are not surprising. Number one, workers that clock fewer than 40 hours a week have a dramatically lower reported burnout rate, only 9%. Again,
Place
because,
I might, the only place I might wonder if that applies would be like healthcare workers, because they tend to like my wife clocks in and out, right? Like she never works overtime, but I would guess their burnout is higher
yeah,
because of the stress of the job.
yeah, I think because there's a whole section in here on like hybrid work and remote work, I think they really focused on office workers.
Okay.
And again, no surprise that hybrid work was actually the best, best for people's mental health because total remote led to loneliness, which we know contributes to burnout, and being in the office led to stresses and pressures, which we know lead to chronic stress and burnout. So that hybrid was like a nice, gives the worker autonomy over what they need to do, but also gives them exposure to team and culture, which fills their cup. So yeah, I think healthcare is its own animal for sure. But because this is global, there are areas around the world that are playing with like the 4-day work week,
Yeah.
and those are going very, very well. Like those pilot programs are doing wonders for employee productivity and happiness. So
I was just hoping the report was going to say that 2 days of hybrid was so much better than 3 days of hybrid.
I don't think it gave a specific on hybrid.
Dang it. I was hoping for some backup.
I know. I support that. You heard it here. Jeff and Rachelle endorse a 2-day hybrid work case. But either way, like hybrid workers are reporting like that higher well-being and productivity. So 2 days, 3 days, you can play with that and see what works best for your company. Either way, we know that it's better.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's totally, I'm curious if you're also seeing this, but I'm still seeing a really big push for full-time return to office in AEC, and that just astounds me that there is not more emphasis on hybrid.
Yeah, I think it's just a easy thing to point to when your company has other problems that you're not really addressing, right? Like we forget the problems that we used to have before COVID. And
Right, right.
then we had this thing happen where everybody worked from home. And so it's just really easy to say, well, we didn't have any problems before COVID, even though we all know that's not true. And now, because we had no problems then, if we bring everybody back, all our problems will go away. And so I just think it's anytime the conversation turns on to solve, it's like, oh, well, just bring everybody back to the office full time. That'll solve it. Just because they don't know what else to do.
Yeah, I get that. And human memory is incredibly short. Like you said,
Yes.
we don't like COVID now is 4 or 5 years ago.
5 years ago,
That long
just past
ago.
the anniversary,
Oh yeah.
on March
Well,
20th.
still, we have totally forgotten what life was like pre-COVID. When we didn't have all these amazing collaboration tools, like we hadn't really figured out, some companies had, but like as an industry, I would say we hadn't really figured out how to work geographically.
Yeah, Rachelle and I would have some long drives in front of us to record podcast episodes.
We really would. We'd be batching like crazy, which means we might be on a better schedule, but
Maybe.
it's banter. You get what you get.
We'd have to find a podcast studio in Trinidad or something.
There has to be something, maybe Raton. But that's another good point is that we have a problem, so we're just going to throw a solution at it without thinking through it. something I thought was really important, and I'm going to harp on this because it's very important. But reducing working hours is not a trend or it's not a frivolous trend, is how they phrased it. It is a data-driven approach to building a happier, healthier, and more productive workforce. Like it is backed by data that this is a good thing for your workforce. The problem is that there is a management and employee,
Disconnect.
sorry,
Disconnect.
disconnect. Thank you. I'm like, I'm
Disillusionment.
looking for a diplomatic word. We don't see things eye to eye. But a alarming number of managers think that their employees are doing just fine. So in the report, they cited 68% of managers think their employee well-being is doing okay, but 45% of employees say that their burnout is worse. So clearly some perception issues, clearly some communication issues. I'm guessing, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but Jeff, you are a manager, so I'm curious what you think is going on there.
I think everything's perfect. I thought you were going to say you didn't want to put words in my mouth, but you were going to say it was fear.
I was, and then I was like, no, I'm not going to take it away. We know people don't like to speak up. We know that they're afraid to say, I can't handle this, or that's not in my scope, or I'm already at capacity for this week.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're afraid to have the conversation. We think we know how the conversation's going to go. So that kind of talks us out of it. We don't want people to think that we can't handle what's being put in front of us because if we can't handle it, somebody else will. And what does that mean for our job? So, yeah, I think there's very good communication between managers and employees. And I also think employees don't feel safe or heard to be able to say how they're actually feeling.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think every time I talk about burnout on LinkedIn, someone likes to pipe up and be like, this is a systemic issue. It is not on the individual to fix their burnout. And I'm like, I agree. I agree that it is a systemic issue and we need to create a culture where it is acceptable to voice what's going on, like I'm at capacity or whatever. But there is that element of personal responsibility to say, hey, manager, like I know you're doing 1,000 things. You don't know exactly what my workload looks like, but I can't take on anything else. Like it's two sides of a coin to me. So I want to be clear that we're not putting the onus on either the manager or the employee. But I do think leadership needs to kind of lead with a top down approach to creating that culture of openness.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see how many of the managers themselves are burned out.
Yeah,
And so are they actually having the capacity to even pay attention to what's going on their own team because they're at a, they may not care anyways. And so if you're tapped out and you're not paying any attention, of course, if surveyed, you're going to say, oh, yeah, everything's great. But you may not have any idea how your team's actually doing because you don't have the capacity to do so.
that's true. That's a good point. That's a good point.
And I think the other thing that happens with this, right, is if you have high turnover, odds are pretty high that you have burnout problems. I think again, right, like people go to the data and it's like, oh, well, this company's paying more and this whatever the reasons are that people give for leaving, but that's not why they left. Why they left is emotional, right? Like they didn't think it was possible for things to get better where they were at. And they don't feel like if they say something, anything's going to happen. And so they leave.
Makes sense.
I just left a job and that was the reason. Like I didn't feel like things were going to get better. Now I did say something, but I still don't feel like the whole reason I left is because I don't think that anything was ever going to happen with it.
Yeah, because leadership hadn't created that culture. Like managers can only do so much. Leadership looks down and doesn't see that there's an issue, and nothing is going to change. So I see all of the arguments there.
But I also wonder how many times that I'll ask an employee, hey, how are you doing? And they're like, oh, I'm great. Or yeah, everything's fine. Right. Okay, cool.
That's me.
One of my favorite things, I give out hours every week, like here's what your hours are for the next 3 weeks. And then I ask for some feedback of like, what are you actually going to work on? And I'll give somebody like, hey, it says you have 98 hours next week. How's everything going? Everything's great. So you're meaning to tell me you're going to work 98 hours next week? Oh no, I'm just, it's like, okay, but I'm asking for your feedback. What are you actually going to do? Not just to tell me that you're okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd be
So
panicked if
that
you
I
handed
mean,
me 98
I'm
hours.
I'm asking for what are you actually going to do? And you're just saying like, yeah, everything's great. Well, I know it's not because I know you're not going to work 98 hours.
Yeah. I hope they're not working 98
They're
hours.
not working 98 hours.
Good. I mean, I know a lot of proposal people who clock 80, 90 hours and they shouldn't. Please don't do
Yeah.
that. You don't know that to anybody.
No, no. That's insane. It happens every once in a while. I'm not going to sit here and act like it's never happened, but I can count on two hands probably the times that that's happened in my career in 25 years. So,
Fuck you. Yeah. Not so much in recent years. I've
yeah.
recovered. Recovering burnout. I also feel like you're a little bit of an outlier. Like you are a really good people manager, and I feel like you've worked really hard to do that. As a proposal person, something I think that is an issue for us, and maybe I'm curious if this is also an issue for your side on the technical side, is that we are often led by a non-proposal or marketing person. Like the principals of the firm are almost always some sort of technical staff, right? So they don't really know what we do, or maybe like they started the firm and they were doing proposals like 30 years ago and still think it's done the same way. So it makes it really difficult for us to communicate like workload and effort and everything that we do day to day. I'm curious, do we have strategies on both sides, like one for managers to
Yeah, I don't
create?
think it's the same because we usually are managed by technical people. Now, that being said, a technical person is not necessarily a great manager either, especially if they're really good at technical. Um, but I think we get promoted until we're in that position where we end up as managers, even if we shouldn't.
Do you get training as a manager?
No,
I've
almost
never
no.
never heard of anyone getting training as a
I mean,
manager.
I went
Just
out and did stuff on my own, but no,
that's
not at
crazy.
all. Um, so yeah, I think if you're with somebody who doesn't understand, it's trying to find somebody who does understand, or like we've talked about that can bridge the gap, right? Where somebody may not understand. And if you're in a technical role, it's okay to say, I don't want to be a manager. And hopefully you work for a company that finds value in having technical people too, because we kind of need those. We need managers and we need people to do stuff. You can't have all or nothing of either.
Right.
And I see that with project managers, right? Like people get promoted to being a project manager, but they're still doing. And it's like, okay, well, now you're being asked to do two jobs and you're not going to be effective at either of them. Or if somebody gets a promotion and their job's not backfilled, right? Like you're going to burn out because you're now being asked to do two jobs.
Yeah.
I don't know what that has to do with it, what we were talking about, but
I was just thinking about that, like that communication part, that like
yeah,
your openness, like are you comfortable going to your manager? And then on the flip side, like is the manager doing anything to offer you support? So that's just where that thought came from while I was
yeah.
reading
I mean,
this.
I think hopefully you're comfortable going to your manager. And if you're not, that probably says something right there. And if you go to your manager and they never do anything, that probably says something too. But you're never going to know that if you
Until
don't
you
try
try.
to have the conversation with them.
Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
all just data. We're gathering data through our communication that we can then use to make a decision with.
We love data. Data is great. Yeah, the next section of the report is probably no surprise to anyone. And we had an entire episode on it, but I just wanted to touch on it because it's backed by, a whole survey. But burnout and loneliness are intertwined, right? Burned out professionals are twice as likely to feel lonely and to isolate themselves, We know that loneliness decreases your well-being. It significantly impacts your performance at work. And this is often, I think, cited as a reason for the push to return to office to combat that. I think that's a misuse of this information. Like we said, there's a nice balance between being pushed back into the office and still having that autonomy to work on your own. So,
I also think just because you're in an office does not mean you're not lonely. Uh,
yeah, agreed.
I have a friend who I'm not going to say where he works, but he just
Don't at him.
his coworkers he just does not connect with at all, and he gets more anxiety from the fact that he has to go into the office because of the strain of being in there and being surrounded by these people that he doesn't connect with than he does working at home, and it disrupts his sleep. And yeah, I think you can be real lonely in an office too if people don't connect with you or aren't friendly.
Completely agree.
As an
Marketer,
engineer,
one for most of my career. Nobody gets what I do. So I've
yeah.
definitely been lonely in the office before.
Well, and as an engineer, you know, I think people we're not the most social creatures either. So you can work around a bunch of engineers and be real lonely.
I really love working with engineers because you can tell the ones that are trying really hard. Because like one of my favorite clients, we have just a steady stream of Netflix recommendations that we pass back to each other, and that's our entire like friendship. That's the only way we connect.
That's a good
Uh,
way to connect.
but you could tell, yeah, we have just bonded over Netflix recommendations because we have very similar tastes. I'm like, this is fine. That's enough. That's enough. But the other thing I really appreciated about this report is that it gave a path forward. So it gave five steps in their model for workplace sustainability. So number one is protection from harm. Number two is human leadership. Number three is people-centered structures. Number four is team connection. And number five is personal growth. Like I wanted to dig into those just a little bit. So
Those are
protection
all
from
things that I
harm,
think the AC industry has struggled with.
all of them. Yeah, I should have asked.
Maybe
Like,
except for the safety. We're really good at safety, I think, on project sites, but maybe not psychological safety.
I mean, they specifically say prioritize physical and psychosocial safety. So we're good at physical safety. I think we're getting a little bit better at the psychological safety. But we need to normalize and support mental health. Again, I'm gonna point fingers at construction. I'm so sorry, construction. But there's a very much culture of man up and get over it. And that's just not good for anybody. It's totally okay. Y'all are doing real hard work out there. Could say, I need help. And that was one of the beautiful things about the woman I had seen speak is that it was a very private helpline. So I think like everyone kind of had like a job card that could go in their wallet and it had their number on it. And literally all they had to do was call the number, tell them what company they were calling from, and that was it. Like nothing got flagged up to management if it didn't need to. Like nobody needed to know that they were reaching out for help. And it really helped with that stigma. So nobody was like pointing fingers at the guy who was not man enough to get over it.
If the military can work towards better mental health, so can construction.
Yes, we can all do it. It will all be okay. A little bit more empathy, y'all.
Yeah, and I think the human leadership, I think, we talked about women being in a bit of a higher burnout rate, but I think that human leadership comes from more women being in leadership positions, more emotional intelligence and our leaders, and a little less of this the do so because I told you to style of
Yeah.
leadership.
Yeah, people are not so interested in that blind follow. We really need to be aligned with the company mission to do that.
I think we've lost the disconnect, or we've lost, like, I think it was okay to do what you were told if you saw the reward at the end of the rainbow, the pot
Yeah,
of gold. But without the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, aka our retirements, I think we're a lot less likely to do what we're told.
Agreed. I also, just as a person who doesn't like to do what I'm told in general,
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
even knowing what we were working toward, like I kind of want to do it my way. Like I will do it within reason, the way it has been structured, and I understand following process and such. Like give me the flexibility to be the most efficient that I can. Like don't micromanage me, man.
Yeah.
So much better if you just let me do it. But yeah, that was a huge thing, was owning the creation of a trusted work environment and culture where everyone thrives. So painting that vision, but also giving a clear path to how we get to it together, but not being so prescriptive on what that path looks like that everyone feels suffocated.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking about this at a workshop I did this week for NOMA, and companies that are most successful or will be most successful are the ones who are able to recognize what their people want from life and connect what their people want from their life to what the company is trying to accomplish and show them how, if we're both, like helping the company achieve its mission helps you achieve this thing that you want for your life, people are going to work hard for that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think we're evolving past the normal or the old school, like work hard, get a bonus, keep working hard, maybe get another one, get a raise, whatever it is. Like
Enjoy
that
life.
consistency. Yeah. It's all changing. It's all changing.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other one, people-centered structures. I really like the idea of realistic job design. As a marketer, where marketing is a catch-all term for all of the icky stuff in communications and marketing and sales that nobody wants to do, I would very much appreciate more realistic job descriptions and more thoughtful and intentional creation of marketing positions. So, just throwing that out there to all the AEC firms.
Sounds nice.
Yeah, it would be great if people understood that. Fair financial compensation. I'm also really tired of reading job descriptions for marketers that read as like a director of marketing, but it's for like a marketing coordinator, and the compensation is like 50 grand a year. Like, no, that is easily $150,000 worth of work minimum. Like, you wonder why no one's applying to work here, or if they do apply and they do start the job, they don't last more than a year.
Yeah.
Not hard. Pay people fairly for the work you're asking them to do.
Yep.
None of this was rocket science. I'm just getting worked up over this report that just re-summarizes everything we already know about burnout.
Hopefully you have a nice cocktail ready to calm yourself back down after.
I have plans for this evening. I'm gonna go zen out Friday night. We're gonna go chill. But we are coming up to the end of the episode, and I do want to get to our burning question. So I just want to summarize, burnout's not increasing necessarily, but is very, very deeply ingrained in our corporate culture. And so it's going to take a lot to break it. And we're on the right path, but we have to keep working towards that. And it's really important that leadership pays attention, gives our staff an appropriate workload and the autonomy to get it done in the way that they see fit. Like trust your people. So, Jeff, do you have any final thoughts before we?
No, we talk about small shifts. Back to back meetings, my favorite thing ever. When you can't even go to the bathroom, recognizing what people are doing great, will help move the needle. Doesn't take a lot.
It doesn't. And small changes is enough to get started. You don't have to like upend company culture overnight.
Yeah. Although over time, that's what will happen if you make small changes.
Yes. And that's what we want. Small changes to get to the big change. It's daunting to go straight for the big change. Though I would love to like flip a switch and tomorrow have like none of the persistent problems that we have. So, are we ready for our burning question?
We're ready.
And now it's time for burning questions.
Excellent. This is another question submitted by an attendee at our live recording of Burnout Banter earlier this year at Southern Regional Conference. We didn't have a good chance to get to it, so now we're getting to it today.
By the way, that was a huge success. So if you people were very engaged. So if you want a live episode of Burnout Banter for your event, it could be a lot of
Shameless
fun.
plug. We got so much positive feedback, like huge, huge. If you want a special type of session that's not the traditional talking at you, people loved the Q&A format of Burnout Banter Live. Seconded that. So this question, and we're gonna have a lot of them. We'll probably have enough questions left over from SRC to go into next season, honestly. That tells you how much engagement we had. But this person asked, what recommendations do you have in trying to change the habits of tech staff or senior leadership? Our team uses compromise and negotiation techniques, but we often have to give in to demands at the end. I thought this was very appropriate given the conversation about small change.
Yeah, this is a great question. I think I might start by looking internally. I think we can feel that we're doing a lot or giving a lot, and it may be worth some internal reflection just to see what habits you could tweak that might get better results, right? If you're relying on one or two things and you're not getting the results that you want, how do you tweak on your end to maybe try to get better results? So I might start there.
Yeah, I had a similar thought on reflecting what you are doing, that is teaching the technical staff and senior leadership that it's okay to maintain those habits, because I'm guilty of this, of saving the day at the last minute or accommodating ridiculous requests because it's just what I have to do to get things done. And that last little piece, giving into demands in the end, makes me think that what we're actually teaching those tech staff and senior leadership is that marketing will always give in if we just, or if we're just stubborn enough, if we just push hard enough or run down the deadline long enough or make it difficult enough, they're just gonna roll over. Just
Have you
unfortunate.
tried treats? My dogs will do anything for treats.
I used to bring in donuts anytime, or bagels anytime I had to do a big ask of the office. So can confirm treats work really well in
And
all
I,
seriousness.
I think the last thing I would suggest is just trying to understand what's getting in their way. If they've agreed to some negotiation or compromise and then don't follow through on it, like what happened? And not from a like accusatory, put them on the defensive aspect, but just from a, hey, we're all trying to get better here. Help me understand what got in the way, and then we can work to try to change it. So I think that's how I would approach it.
Yeah, I would also try and identify a behavior and break it into smaller pieces. Like, I'm gonna guess that a big issue might be missing deadlines. So I would try and get them to submit maybe like a piece of content on time, or maybe only a couple of days late, and then heavily reward that behavior, whether it's some sort of compliment or bribery. Also being super open to including them in the process. Like, hey, thank you so much for getting this site plan to me on time. I now have the ability to make it, like, I have the ability to make it really pop on the page and make sure that the client really understands it, and also make sure that it matches the approach narrative. So there's nothing, I don't know. I don't want to like put it back on them like, oh, I'm checking your work because I don't trust you. But like, give them ownership of the process. Like, they did something really good, which is going to result in the client really liking this proposal response, and like give them that kudos. And then when you win, you're like, yeah, we won because you did this awesome thing on time. So that small, subtle shift in behavior and reward will often help.
Positive reinforcement versus negative reinforcement, it goes a long way.
That's carrot versus stick. I'm a big fan of carrot. I'm real bad at stick.
That doesn't surprise me.
Surprises no one, honestly. I'm a little pushover. Any other thoughts on our burning question?
Nope. I hope we answered it.
I do too. Change is uncomfortable. That giving in puts us in a comfort zone. And even if we don't like what's happening, we really do need to face that fear that Jeff likes to talk about, hold our ground and not give in.
And you are
So
training them that you will give in if you give in over and over again. I mean, if I put a rule in place and never hold the rule for my kids, they know the rule doesn't exist, right? So why would they ever follow it?
exactly. Exactly. Yeah. If you tell your dog not to get on the couch, but then you let him on the couch, he's just gonna get on the couch.
Nope.
Just kidding. Technical staff and leadership are not like cute puppy dogs.
Dogs
But
and kids, that's exactly what they're like.
uh, on that note, thank you for listening. Friendly reminder to all of our listeners, if you have a burning question, you can email it to us at burnoutbanter@gmail.com. Also, remember to like, subscribe to the podcast on Amazon, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen to make sure you never miss an episode. Also, depending on the timing of this drop, we will either have been at Southwest Regional or we will be at Southwest Regional as this is dropping. I
I would
suspect
guess
it's
we'll have
already
already
happened.
been there. Been there,
We've
done
already
that.
been there, done that. It was awesome.
We might be at NERC.
We, yeah, we might be at Northeast Regional Conference in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, April 23rd and 25th. Jeff will also be at the Mile High PMI, that's really fun to say, Mile High PMI Conference in Denver on April 18th. And I will be in Columbus on April 15th doing an all-day workshop on exactly how to use AI to make proposals so much easier. So
Probably
we
after this podcast goes out, I will be at AGC AEC TechCon in St. Louis the first week of May, talking about.
you see the first week of May for AEC.ai. We're just all over the place, y'all.
We are. We're going to need a full month of rest and recovery in June.
We really are. If you catch Jeff or I out in the wild, come snap a picture with us. Burnout Banter. And finally, as Jeff mentioned, we are happy to take Burnout Banter on the road to your organization, to your conference, to your event. Just give us a shout at burnoutbanter@gmail.com. We are also available to help your organization if it's struggling with burnout or stress management. We can do in-house coaching to help your staff get back on track. So with that, thank you so much for listening and bantering with us, and we'll see you next time.
Hey, everybody.